Hello, so this week's video, these are all pre-recorded by the way, because I think I'm still in Egypt, so I'll be in Egypt right now. Message from my future self. So this week's video is about cultivating that connection with your higher self. So you can never, ever, ever go wrong with enhancing and cultivating that connection. Like literally, it is foundational, it is fundamental to any spiritual practice, to any, I don't like to dissect life like that. The spiritual is in everything. But if you are someone who connects with those aspects of life, then you will know how fundamental that connection with our higher aspects are. So your higher aspects as well, your higher self, can be an angelic version of you. It can be different galactic versions of you from different star systems. It can be versions of you from past lives, from different civilizations, from Atlantis, from Lemuria. It can be different exalted versions of yourself from different past lives. It doesn't have to be ones from totally ancient civilizations. I have a version of me that is this 15th century mystic who comes through when I'm writing sometimes, and my whole vernacular changes when I'm channeling this version of myself. And so really it's just the most magical thing to open up to you on all the different higher timelines of yourself. And you can also channel and connect with future versions of yourself from this life. You can connect with future versions of yourself from other timelines as well. They can all be considered different versions of your higher self, right? And you can also communicate with them as almost like a conglomerate, like a collective, which would just almost like a high council of just different versions of you that are all kind of joined together in one consciousness. And so when you are cultivating those relationships, they're all going to appear at different times and depending on what your consciousness needs at various different times. But especially if you're kind of just starting out with this stuff, is good to just have that idea of just your higher self. You don't have to view it as multi-dimensional as that, although guaranteed you are as multi-dimensional as that, but you don't have to view it from that perspective. If that's kind of too big, you can just view it as this version of you which has a little bit more, I would say almost heightened kind of awareness. It's not that we are lower, it's just that within the realm that we operate within, we're bound by matter in a different way than our higher versions of ourselves are, that exist more within the spiritual planes. And really what a lot of old mystery school teachings, what a lot of spiritual teachings are about, is bridging that gap between your lower forms, your lower urges, and your higher self. It's not that it's this part of us that exists so far away that we cannot access. Not at all. It is very accessible to us once we kind of begin to purge a little bit, once we begin to release the density that we hold in our field, our traumas. All of that kind of stuff is what blocks us from being able to access our the higher realms that we exist within. And so really there's so many amazing ways that you can connect with your higher self or selves. You can do it through automatic writing. That is a really, really useful one. So often people might write with, if you're right-handed, you might want to write with your left and vice versa. And just kind of begin to ask some questions that are maybe pertinent to you right now, maybe around healing, maybe around your next steps, things like that. And just see what begins to come through, because often we have to make the choice to start bridging that gap. Often it's, it does happen sometimes, but usually we will have some kind of contract in place for why that has happened. But we often have to signal to our higher aspects that we are ready to start opening those doors of communication. So even things like imagining a flower, lilies are really potent for me right now. And just imagining, you know, you might just want to imagine like almost like a time lapse, you know, of a flower opening, and just start mirroring that up to your higher self. You know, just hold that image in your mind with the intention to connect with your higher self, and imagine a flower, any flower of your choice, opening, because the spiritual realms very much communicate with us through imagery, through symbolism. So the more that you understand symbolism, the deeper your connection with your higher aspects is going to be. Don't get me wrong, a lot of spirit guides do speak very plainly to you as well. That is also very possible, but especially in the early stages of our evolution with this kind of stuff, you're going to want to try and use symbology, the language of symbols, in order to create a bridge with your higher aspects. And they will also begin to start mirroring symbols back to you. So my higher selves do very much use flowers a lot to send me messages. So they will send me a flower, and I might sit with that flower and just see what comes through in meditation, or sometimes I'll Google like the spiritual properties of a certain flower and see if that information resonates with me as well. Roses, lotuses, you know, flowers which really symbolize the inner self, the spiritual self, the heart center. You know, that's a really you're sending a really strong symbol there that you're ready to begin this communication and this relationship with these higher aspects of you. So those are some really useful ways. Also, the language of myth. I think it's Carl Jung that says myths are like the facts of this reality, and that really has resonated with me since I came into that that awareness that, you know, all of these stories are essentially, they're not just talking about the, you know, the individual characters. It's much deeper than that. It's archetypal, and that's what the language and the realms of spirit are. They are archetype, they are impulse. So it's less about the individual. That's the thing. In the material realm, it's very much about the I, and that is perfect for where we are. But when we're bridging that gap, it's less about that. It's much more about those collective frequencies, those collective archetypal energies. And that's why you will find the same stories in different tribes, in different communities all across the world. They are exactly the same stories, you know, about people going deep into the underworld. You know, with the myth of Persephone, you know, and we have the modern day interpretations of that with Alice in Wonderland. It's the same story over and over and over, and it's because those stories exist within us, within our blood, within our bone. They are archetypal, they are fundamental, they are the very glue that bonds this reality together. And so when you are tuning into that, when you're tuning into those spiritual realms, it's not going to be as straight as I'm talking to you now. It's going to be far more ethereal, far more archetypal. You're probably not going to understand it from the left side of your brain. You're going to want to use the right side of your brain. So for example, me and my friend were reading, I just got a Brothers Grimm fairy tale book, and we were reading one of the stories. And it's something along the lines of, there are 12 sisters and there's a king, and the girls go off at night every night, and the king doesn't know where they go. And he invites like a suitor to come and find out where these, you know, his daughters are going every night. And this man, you know, realizes that the king is offering this, and he decides he's going to go after, you know, work out where these girls are going at night. And it's interesting because in all of these kind of stories, like often the suitor or the sort of main archetypal hero of the hero's journey has sustained some kind of injury. So in this one, he's a soldier and he's sustained an injury, and that represents the opening of the heart, right? And then who does he come across while he's on his way to the king's palace. He meets an elder woman, which is the crone, the archetypal wise woman, who gives him this knowledge and who gives him an invisibility cloak and these gifts. And she says to him, don't drink the wine at night because then you won't be able to follow and see where the daughters go, right? And so that's, again, it's like, don't dull your consciousness. Don't numb yourself. Be careful what you consume, right? These are the archetypal messages that are coming through this story. And then the soldier goes and he goes after the daughters. Now it's symbolic as well that there were 12 daughters, because there are 12 signs in the zodiac. 12 is a very, very powerful spiritual number, and it represents cycles and completions of cycles as well. And, you know, the sort of the hero's journey is about pursuit of the feminine. It's a pursuit of his own feminine essence, the opening of his heart, the unlocking of himself through his own feminine aspects. That's the Holy Grail. That when people talk about the Holy Grail, the chalice, the cup, that's what they're talking about, right? And so he ends up following the daughters underground. And again, going underground, going deep within the earth. It represents going deep within ourselves to find the deeper layers of us, to uncover, to unpick, to retrieve lost parts, lost aspects, forgotten parts, forgotten aspects of ourselves. And so that is always going to be the journey that your higher self is leading you on, is to reclaim the different fractals of you that exist wherever that might be. And that might be wounded parts of you from other lives or from this life, but it can also be exalted and very gifted parts of you from this life. The amount of times I see in sessions when people are really shifting through stuff, and then we integrate a soul fragment and all of a sudden their mediumship skills begin to turn on, or they're able to channel an angelic part of themselves, you know, really beautiful things happen when we begin to merge with our higher aspects, with ourselves on higher dimensional planes. And so I hope this video has been useful. I think my advice is basically just start communicating with your higher self. And if you have any questions, as always, just leave me a comment and I'll get back to you. And many, many blessings for your day.